We are speaking with Alejandro Furas, the Secretary General for Global NCAP. Now, Alejandro, thank you for taking out the time to speak with us, on the back of the twin test that you all did with the Kushak and the Taigun. Straight off, we've read the reports, we've done some stories on it, but I'd like to hear from you, beyond the reports, how did you think the cars performed?
From our opinion, the cars performed very well. They performed what we usually say comfortably well in all the parameters we tested overall. We have noticed a platform which is actually, we can call it a global platform because it has in consideration many of the features that are offering in other markets. So this platform of the VW group is sold in other markets where they have the 6 airbags, they have the AEB systems as well, so active safety technologies and ADAS technologies available. And in terms of engineering, this car, even if they don't have the ADAS technologies as standard, but they do have the capability of plugging them in production. So in fact, they are producing some of the units with that. So the point is that you have a platform which is conceived globally, and it was respected in the original design over the safety features. So that's something that pleases us very well. The other thing is that we also are pleased to see a manufacturer proposing for the Indian markets a car at the level of, or aiming to have the same level of the best practices globally in terms of safety. And we were also gladly surprised in general with a strategy of, let's say, of a car which is, let's say from the consumer perspective, it's a car which is comfortable in all the terms we tested in it. So it's not a car that's compromising anything at all. It's a car which is very comfortable in all the aspects we tested it. It's not like it just managed to get a few points here and a few points there, and they just, it's a very comfortable 5-star car. So that's something we were actually very pleased to see.
Right. Yeah. And Alejandro, I think, yes, going by the report, and also by the videos, it did look like, yes, the cars did pass comfortably. And I think what's sort of remarkable, and the other thing I want to talk about today, is the fact that this is the new protocol, the upgraded protocol, which frankly, even personally, and we're quite excited about, because I think you'll have done a great job of sort of introducing crash safety tests, but now it's a more rounded, I would say, safety test. Not just crash, because you've got ESC, and I did also notice that you all are awarding points for seatbelt reminders, which just recently, I don't know if you're keeping track of the Indian sort of market there, but we had a very high-profile accident and a death, unfortunately. The chairman of ex-chairman of Tata Motors passed away in a crash, and it so happened that they were not belted up in the rear. In the rear seats. So I think that was a really nice thing to see, that points being awarded. I want to know, though, do you think that at some point you would enforce that like you have with ESC, or will it always remain points?
Let's make a clarification. For the 5 stars today, for the 5 stars, you need to have the seatbelt reminders okay in the front, not just get a point. You're not just going to get points. Of course, you will get points awarded, but you need to have the full points in the front seats in order to be able to reach a 5-star, even a 4-star.
I mean in the rear. Sorry, yeah.
In the rear, I agree with you. In the rear, we haven't yet pushed for the full score, but it's coming in the next update of protocols. But you can see more or less in the distance what's going on in Latin America. Latin America, basically nowadays, if you don't have a seatbelt reminder in the rear seats, it's unlikely, or it's going to be quite difficult for you, unless you're perfect in all the rest, which is not the case, to match or get a 5-star result. So that is actually what we are aiming to, and we will get there.
ESC, was that too difficult? And do you think it's a big step for manufacturers? Because from what we understand, it's an incremental add-on over, let's say, an ABS system that's already in a car.
I mean, you have already the ABS there. And once you have the ABS in the car, technically speaking, when you have the ABS, the computer, or the what you need as a computer to operate the ESC, the brain of the ESC, it basically has a cost of $60 or less per unit for the manufacturers. So you're talking about a margin. It's really, a very small amount of money in the terms of the whole picture. It's a lot of money, but if you plug it into the full cost of a car, it's not that much. If a car is published today, And today, in order for us to count or consider the ESC for the assessment, we need to have three conditions: at least the best-selling variant, or an equal amount of units as the best-selling variant across all variants. Need to have ESC nowadays. Second, the ESC has to be a standalone option. That means that if I come into the store in a shop and I want to buy the car, I want to add only the ESC, I can do that.
Okay.
And the third point is that after 2 years, all the cars, I mean, all the units of that model is going to be fitted with ESC. So basically ESC standard in 2 years.
Right.
So that does need to be, I mean, question is whether if after 2 years they don't do it. Well, definitely if that is not going to happen, they're going to be in the news because we're going to downgrade the results because they're not meeting the 2 years fitment. Yeah.
Right. In fact,
very unlikely manufacturers play with that. They usually stick to the words and the commitments.
True. Yeah, because it is a future event, so you're going to have to downgrade and penalize them, I suppose, later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Alejandro, the other thing is for a consumer. In fact, yesterday when the results were published, we had, a lot of interest in it, a lot of comments and dialogue happening around this. Once again, very sort of animated discussions. Now, typically, what tends to happen is people tend to compare cars, right? And in fact, unfortunately, even some of the press. Other press began comparing cars. From what we understand and what we ran as a story, that isn't something you should do because it's not fair in the sense that today a Kushaq and a Taygun have passed a far more stringent and a more sort of holistic safety assessment, whereas the past cars were on a different protocol. So in our understanding, you shouldn't compare them. In fact, some press even went and created lists, number 1, 2, 3, etc. But if a consumer wanted to compare, and wants to know, what should he look at? Should he look at just the front crash score, between two cars?
That's a good question, and it happens everywhere. You have to step up the protocols. I mean, we can't stay forever in the same. If we want to move the industry, want to move the market into safer cars, right. Remember that our goal is to have democratized safety. Our goal is to have the basic safety at the level of let's say the best practices globally. I mean, like Europe, Australia, US, without the Indian market paying more for that. And that's a key thing. Right. So we want a standard. You go to a shop, you want to buy a car which is available in Europe. In terms of basic safety, you get the same as a European, or Australian, or Japanese, an American, without having to pay extra for that. That's what we're after. Yeah. Right. And when I say safety, I'm not saying I'm clearly leaving out all luxury and extra bling bling thing you can have on a car. Yeah. Now, if you want to compare, you need always to keep improving the protocols. Otherwise, you don't drag the industry to improve the cars. I mean, that's one of the points. If we want to compare the previous tests and their current tests, there are big differences. For example, the only thing you can compare test by test is the frontal crash from the previous protocol and the new one. But in the new protocols, we have updated and we have become more stringent in the pressure of the chest. So basically, the injuries in the chest are, let's say, more demanding in the reading. You need to have less injuries, so less records of injuries in order to score a certain amount of points. Right. So a car that was probably scoring 14 points out of 16 in the previous protocol, if we recalculate under the new one, it's likely this car, if the chest readings are not well, it's likely that car will be even less scoring in the frontal. But I mean, in terms of the test itself, you can compare pair to pair, peer to peer directly, frontal crash, last protocol, frontal crash, this protocol. The side impact scenario we have performed in the old protocol, which was only for the 5 stars, that's something that it's a UN regulation scenario. The scenario of the crash, which is a side impact with a 50 kilometers an hour barrier hitting the car, all that stays the same. Okay. But there's a big difference. In the regulatory test, in the previous protocols, we didn't have children in the rear seats. Oh. Because the regulation doesn't require children in the rear seats. Right. Basically, if the manufacturer wanted to have them because it's an extra, they could place them, but regulation is not requiring that. And the second thing is that the readings that you are looking after, or what you're checking in the biomechanics of the injuries, it's quite different in the new system, in the new protocols, because you are using the UN regulation requirements as a baseline. Right. And from there, So basically, a car which is scoring, let's say, just over a few points in the new side impacts, it could have easily passed UN regulation in the previous protocols.
Right.
So there is a huge change in performance on the side impact protection, the previous protocols to this one. And the other thing is that in the past, we only tested side impact in cars which were aiming to, or their goal was to get a 5-star.
Right.
Nowadays, we test side impact in all cars we're testing.
Right.
Unless you are 0 stars already in the frontal crash. When the car goes that bad, that you're already at 0 star in the first one, we are not forced to run the side. We will still do it as much as we can, but we're not forced to by protocols. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So
that's
essentially,
sorry, that's the passive safety. If we go to the other aspects, in the past we didn't check the side head protection,
right,
which is a big difference.
Correct.
And side head protection is not just for the pole impact scenario. It's basically when you're hit on the side by a larger vehicle, when you're hit by an SUV and you're driving a normal car. This is when the head protection plays a key role. ESC is something we didn't consider in the previous protocols. Now we are requiring ESC. The seatbelt reminders in the rear seats is something we are adding into these protocols, and pedestrian protection. So you can't reach more than 3 stars if you don't have a good pass pedestrian protection requirements nowadays as a standard. So those are the big differences. A big jump in terms of adult occupant protection from the previous protocol to the new one. The child occupants has been shifted also in the frontal test for the child. It's the same. There's no changes. When it comes to the side assessment, yes, we do have a side impact scenario where you have children sitting in the car now. So the side impacts we are playing in the new protocol, you are also assessing the child safety on the side impacts. Right. And the other things we added on the child safety is that we are going deeper in the car in how the car can host or handle properly adjusting different child seats, which in our criteria are the most demanding ones in the markets. Demanding ones doesn't mean that they are the best performance. Sometimes you have very poor performance, which are the more demanding ones. And one thing goes to the other. Yeah. So that's basically the main changes we have seen from previous protocols to this one.
This one, yeah. So yeah,
that's why you can't compare a 5-star from the previous to this one.
Alejandro, what happens if a manufacturer does advertise? Because in India, people are advertising it. In fact, Skoda and Volkswagen, for example, have already released ads, saying a 5-star rated car. As a consumer, if I see that and then I see another car from the older protocol, also 5-star, it does get confusing. So are manufacturers allowed to advertise now?
There are 2 things. First time, one important thing, once you have a car rated, you can use for marketing purposes as a manufacturer, you can use that for marketing purposes up to 4 years after you publish the results. So let's say the car was tested in 2022, the car was tested in 2018.
Right.
Then this will be the last year they can actually use those results for marketing. Next year they can't. Right. They have the right, basically. That's a standard in the different NCAPs. Second, from a consumer perspective, when you see the labels with the star ratings, you will see that new star ratings are all yellow. Previous ones were blue and green.
Okay.
And second, below that, in both cases, you have the test date. So in which year the car was tested.
Okay.
That is exactly where it reached 2022 onwards. Yeah, that's in year in the new protocol.
Okay, so that's good consumer advice. And so basically, what we have to look for is the new color, which is yellow, as you said, for the new protocol, and also the test date underneath.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. It has to be 2022 onwards is when you have basically the new protocol.
But they can advertise the old star rating.
Up to 4 years, yeah. Up to 4 years.
Yeah, up to 4 years. Don't you think? It would maybe make sense to sort of advertise, previous protocol or have a disclaimer there. You think something like that?
We can help a lot with that. We just try to stick as much as we could with the standard procedures of NCAPs. But It's definitely that if there is something coming from the media that would like to make something to clarify and make a better message for the consumers, we are more than happy to cooperate with that because it's very important.
Alejandro, the other question was, I had is with the pole side impact test. Now that essentially is obviously a most, I would say, it's not stringent, but a more demanding test than the barrier test, given higher concentration. And I did notice that the cars that you all tested, the Kushaq and the Taigun, in the pole impact were the ones with the side airbags, whereas the barrier test were the ones without. Why that difference? What's the what would be the logic there? I mean, why not test a car without the airbags? Yeah.
Okay. The logic is the following: when in a car you don't have side head protection, you don't test the pole impact, because it's going to be a 0-star anyway. It's, in fact, you can damage the dummy. So that's the reason why you don't. If you don't have side head protection, you don't go for the pole impact.
Okay.
Why we have these differences in this publication is according to the protocols. It clearly says that in order to score a 5-star, you need to have a minimum fitment rate of side head protection. I call it side head protection. I don't want to say coating airbags, because some manufacturers are using different kind of airbags, but they are all aiming to protect the head and side. Yeah? Right. So back to the start. The requirements of the protocols today, it requires certain features in the front and side impacts. Front and side impact need to be tested with the most basic safety spec available in passive safety. Yeah.
Right.
When it comes to the extra requirements of 5 stars, you need to have side head protection as option in the car, at least as an option. Yeah. Right. And the way it works is that 2022, which is only a few months away, I mean, until we finish it, we're going to allow 30% of the volume on the side head protection. So basically, from whatever they produce for India, 30% needs to be equipped with a side head protection. Then they scale it up. Next year is 50%. Year after is 70%. Then we jump to 90%, and 2026 is 100%. And basically, they need to stick to the 2026 100% or standard feature for the side head protection. That's where it needs to be. And that's the reason why we give the information to the consumers of this extra feature. Yeah, as we did in the past when we were testing in the first protocols. So we used to test the cars with and without airbags, and just to show what was one case and the other. And basically here we're showing the benefit of an optional equipment. And we are recommending explicitly in the publication just to buy or get the car with the 6 airbags. In this case, these are 6 airbags. In another case, it could have been 4 airbags. Yeah. But the point is that it back to what I just mentioned at the beginning. If we would have come with a standard requirement for a coating airbag, probably no manufacturers would have gone into this because it's very challenging for the markets. We know there is a law in India coming to the 6 airbag, but it still has open possibilities of being challenged at certain points. Right. And it's also for new cars, new models, no new cars. So that's also posing a very long term in the future where you see all the cars fitted with standard side airbags. We believe that this way is going to be kind of an incentive for the manufacturers to speed up and bring things much earlier into the market, which I cannot tell you who or which manufacturer, but I can tell you that there are many manufacturers in India placing already the side coating airbags in most of the cases. I haven't seen yet one case with a 4 airbag system, but mostly with the coating airbags. They are placing them already into production even earlier from regulation, just because of our protocols. Yeah. So it is working, the mechanism. If we would have said for the 5 stars, you need to have standard coating airbags in the model, probably no manufacturer would say, it doesn't make any sense for me to invest in that. I'll probably just leave it aside. And it's at this point where we are in the development where we are now, it's all about making things available for consumers. As it happened in the first stage of the test of Global NCAP, to make things available, push, incentivize the things to be available so consumers are informed and they can choose what to buy. Our belief in our experience says that demand is going to be so high that consumers will push the change for standard feature in the coating airbags much earlier than when manufacturers are planning to have it.
Right. And Alejandro, a last question, in terms of, I think we just spoke of ADAS. Will ADAS and things like, say, tire pressure monitoring systems, the TPMS, also feature in our future protocol in India? Definitely,
yes. What we are doing now, it's somehow we reach, I would say, a mid-acceptable level of passive safety assessments. Why? Because now we have the front, side, and side pole impact scenarios. We have pedestrian protection, passive safety. So I would say that we are covering the most relevant passive safety issues. It's likely we will introduce also the whiplash, or the rear impact neck protection, as well as the structural protection in the rear, or the structural integrity in the rear. So we are covering all crash scenarios as much as we can. There are a few more, yes, but we're trying to cover, so passive safety-wise, we're going to be quite covering the broad range of what can happen. And it's likely then we'll dive in more aggressively or probably more faster in terms of much faster in terms of the active safety technologies like ADAS technologies in different levels. Remember that ADAS technologies are very wide in range. You have from blind spot detections with the technologies are not as expensive or demanding as, for example, for the ones that you need for the AEB for pedestrians. And so we're going to come with all of them in a block, and manufacturers will be able to structure the points in the way they can or they want. But we will definitely start pushing for the active safety in a higher speed, I would say. Right.
No, thanks, Alejandro, for that. And yes, you're right. I mean, ADAS, I think would be a good sort of implementation into the future protocols. Again, moving towards more active safety. So thank you for speaking with us. For
two messages before we stop the interview.
Sure,
there are two things I want to say. First of all, ADAS technologies are not autopilots.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
ADAS technologies are assisting the drivers.
True.
That's all they are. Whatever marketing the industry has behind them,
True.
that's what they are. Yeah.
Correct.
So that's point one. So let's put the expectations in the right level for the consumers.
True.
They are very helpful. Once you use them, you get used to them. It's very hard not to have them in the car. But that doesn't mean that the car is going to self-drive itself. It's not going to be there, even if they market it like that. Yeah. So that's point one. Second recommendation, strong recommendation in the latest results to buy the car with the full airbag equipment. Yeah. To buy the six airbag version. And one main recommendation we always have to the consumers: don't be afraid to demand. It's your right to have a safer product. It's your right to have information about what the cars are being sold in India performing like in an NCAP. So don't feel any fear for that. Just it's your right to know what you're buying.
True.
Yeah.
True. Right. Thanks for that, Alejandro. Thanks for speaking with us. Right. And hope we see you in India soon.